Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to Let's Have Renaissance, a podcast about writing, editing, publishing, literature, the arts, and more. I am Ito Otini.
And I'm Makaya Otini, and today we're speaking with Gabriel Jason Dean. Gabriel is an award-winning playwright and screenwriter whose productions for adults and children have been performed on and off Broadway and have met with critical acclaim. He teaches English literature and creative writing and theater at Muhlenberg College, where he's also in the process of creating a major in musical theater. We're excited to be with him today.
Thank you for tuning in. We're excited that you're here. Why don't you also subscribe, like, comment, and share this episode with your friends?
And if you know anyone who wants to come on the podcast, please do send them our way. Also, if you haven't yet, sign up for our newsletter where we share updates, resources, and opportunities at thedatekeepers.com.
Gabriel, thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to have you. Can you please tell us about yourself?
Sure, yeah. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much for the invite. I've enjoyed getting to know your podcast over the last month or so. I'm Gabriel Jason Dean. I'm a playwright and screenwriter, and I am also a professor of English and creative writing and theater at Muhlenberg College in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Got into theater as a child who wanted to be an actor. Acting is always the gateway drug, into theater, and usually musical theater is the bug that bites the hardest, and that was true with me as well. So, I grew up in a small town in the northwest corner of Georgia, the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, Chatsworth, Georgia. It's a place where you wouldn't think the theater would be a really vibrant scene, but I was very lucky and had an amazing high school music teacher there who were these just incredible gods to me. And so, that's where I started was, as an actor, and very slowly made my way into putting words on a page and starting to make theater that way. And that's pretty much what I do. I don't really tread the boards anymore these days.
And what is the worst play you've written?
Oh, that's a great question. Probably my first play, honestly.
Where is it?
It's not, you will never see it. It's
Can
it's
you
in a
tell us
drawer.
about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to say that you would never see it because pieces of it actually became another play. There was a piece called Iron Moon. You could see I was fairly pretentious, even in my title. It was I don't know how to describe it, a blend of history, and I was trying to work through some family stuff that in undergrad, it was my senior year of undergrad, and I wrote this play as my honors thesis. And it was one of those things where you start writing it because it feels good and therapeutic, but then you realize hopefully you realize it sooner rather than later. I, on the other hand, did not. You realize that maybe this wasn't for everybody else to see. It was just for you to work some things out. And so, I did that. But pieces of that play, actually, the character that was really based on my maternal grandmother became a character in my play Terminus, which was my first off-Broadway show in New York, and starred Deirdre O'Connell, as a lot of folks know her now. She's Tony-winning, Obie-winning, mega, super incredible actress. So I can't say that play is totally dead, but when I say little pieces of it, I mean 12 lines or something like that remained in the play Terminus.
And I guess the corollary to that question is, what is your favorite play you've written? And is that opinion shared by your audience? And if not, why do you think that is?
That's a good question, too. It's hard to pick a favorite because I really go far into this metaphor of my plays are like my children. So I'm afraid if I say one, then the others will get jealous. But
we all know you have a favorite, though.
Yeah, I have a couple plays for young audiences. And I think my favorite play it's a play called The Transition of Doodle Pequeño. I wrote this in 2009, 2010. A boy named Doodle, who is living in Southern California, and his father has recently been deported. So it's he and his mom on their own. And they just moved to this quadruplex, and it's Halloween night. He has an imaginary goat friend, and he meets a person who he feels is kind of strange or weird at first, and then they become friends. I think it's my favorite because I had the most fun writing it. It's the only one I've been able to share with my kids so far. It does get done a lot, so I can't say that other people disagree with me on that, but it hasn't been without its controversy. It has a boy in a dress at the center of the story, and that, causes some parents to be a little upset. So it's been canceled a couple of times and censored, but I actually think that that's made the following around the play even stronger.
Where does the name Doodle come from?
It's a question that's raised in the play. Thank you for asking it. What they say in the play is when his friend Reno meets him for the first time, he says, "That's what the cat does outside of the litter box. Why would you call yourself that?" It's just something that his mother, who doesn't speak English very well, starts to call him. And it's one of those words, as I was thinking about what a good nickname would be, doodle is such an odd word, and I think even more odd when English is not your primary language, and it's really fun to say.
Yeah.
So I kind of got caught up on that idea of to have heard that word and not really understood the meaning behind it, and then just thought, that's a cute word. I'll use it to give my son a nickname.
I had a dog growing up named Doodle. Actually, her full name was Doodad, and Doodle was the
Oh.
diminutive form of that. So
That's great.
I had to ask, yeah. What are you working on now?
As of a couple weeks ago, I'm working on an adaptation of one of my plays to a film, Heartland. I'm getting to at least make the first pass on the script, so I'm working on that. I've never adapted myself before. I've done adapting other people's things or, doctoring other people's work, but it's a new ballgame, so I'm working on that. I do have a new play. When I say in the hopper, I mean like I've literally not written a single word, but I have a lot of ideas that is being commissioned by Interact Theater in Philadelphia, and it's a play called The Workshop. I'll be looking at the nonviolence pacifist workshops that were taught by Reverend James Lawson in the early 1960s for the Nashville student sit-ins. I was drawn to them because of the sort of theatricality that's inherent within them. They would practice pacifism by having a multiracial group of folks sit at the lunch counter, and then like the cohort would hurl epithets at them, grab them. It was really sort of this traumatizing thing, but it was to desensitize, right? So they used theater to create what ultimately became one of the most successful aspects of the civil rights movement. And I thought to myself, like, I don't know that we could do that today. The line between discomfort and harm is different. So it's going to be something in that world. The activism of now meets the activism of the past.
Can you take us back to the first time when you found out that one of your plays is going to be performed? And can you tell us the story? How did you feel? What was that experience like?
Yeah, there are two stories I have with this. So the first play that ever was seen by an audience, I self-produced, which I totally advocate for playwrights. You should absolutely do that. No one believes in yourself, hopefully, more than you do. And it's probably not going to be your best work, but you'll be in complete control. And you'll get to learn about the process of putting a play on its feet from the inside. And it was just invaluable to me. I've done it a couple more times since then. I've produced other people's work much more than my own, but that was fantastic. I wouldn't say the play was great. The play itself on the page wasn't necessarily great, and the production was, everybody gave it their all, but it was on a shoestring budget and a prayer. But that was exhilarating. I was 23 years old, 24 years old. My then girlfriend, now wife, directed it. We cast our friends. When I first started writing, I really leaned hard into the writing as therapy, I have to say. I'm calling myself out again. There's a little bit of that going on in that play as well. But I think as I've done this more and more, I wouldn't say that the writing isn't therapeutic to me. It's just not as overtly so, right? It's not about me anymore. It's about the people in the room who are going to make it, and then the audience too. And then there was the time that somebody else said yes to me for the first time. And ironically, it was in the same place where I self-produced, was like the small stage of a bigger regional theater. And then I got to know them through that process. I had written a comedy about this couple going through a lot of things, mainly grief, but also going through the housing crisis, trying to sell their house. It's a play called Buy My House, Please. It was the Aurora Theater in Lawrenceville, Georgia, where the first play had premiered. And I'd gotten to know them, and I invited them to a staged reading that was happening of this brand new, fresh off the press. Literally, I'd typed the last sentence an hour before the actors got to read it. And they said, "This is great. We want to do your play." And that was, I guess I got addicted after that. I've been doing it ever since. I was super proud of that production. They did amazing work. This was in like 2010 before. Now you see projection in kind of everything that we do in the theater. It's just part of the language, but they had like live cameras on stage because the premise of that play was that they were so desperate that they agreed to this insanely over-the-top reality television show, Buy My House, Please, to come in and just take over their lives. And so, you had cameras on the stage, and they were able to do that in real time. It was pretty incredible, especially for 2010. So yeah, that was a really fantastic moment. Thank you for asking me that question. I haven't thought about those memories in quite a while.
And where do you see students now who are studying theater? And what do you think about the comprehension crisis? Because if we can't focus, we cannot create.
I'm going to knock on something before I say this, but this is knocking on my wooden desk here. I think that students, this is just my experience, and I teach it at Muhlenberg College in the theater and dance department. We have, give or take, 350 majors in a school that's 1,700. So we're a pretty big part of the landscape here. And because of that, we get students who are really committed. Either they got into NYU and couldn't afford it, came here, or didn't want that. They wanted a liberal arts education, not a conservatory education. So I would say that the students here at Muhlenberg are pretty top notch and are really invested in this really ancient art form, which requires a kind of attention that is so rare, right? If you think about it, like it's one of the hardest things. This is why theaters are always in the red. Even if they're selling out, they're still in the red. You got to buy an expensive ticket, so there's access, right? You've got to give up an evening to sit in a dark room with a bunch of strangers, potentially catching the flu or something like that, to watch a story that you may or may not like. So it's this big risk that comes with it. And then to not look at your phone for 2 hours, right? And I will say, at least the students here are on board. They're into what I think of as the ancient craft of it and the analog nature of it, that need for connection and understanding, that need for aliveness, that need for community is so strong.
We've talked to different playwrights who have different concerns about the state of playwriting and the causes for the things that trouble them. What condition do you think theater is in these days, and what do you think the reasons are for that, and how do you see it changing?
I guess I'll qualify that. I'm speaking only about the American theater because it's really what I know. I mean, I do think we're in a rough spot in that the stories that I see, I'm not going to name any names, but I see season announcements from particularly the larger theaters, mid-sized and above, doing work that for me isn't the point of theater. I mean, no shame to like just pure entertainment. I like a good Seussical the musical as much as anybody, right? But when that's all that we're getting, when the theater is not trying to expand our understanding of the human condition and who we are in relation to now, that's troubling for me. And I'm making a huge generalization, but by and large, I'm seeing a lot more of that because producers, artistic directors, boards are risk averse, and they're right to be because it won't take very much to close the doors. So they're really just trying to stay open. It's a catch-22, right? On one side, I'm like, do more provocative work. Well, that might close us down. This is their argument. I guess I'm on the other side of that, though, and I say like, a little bit Field of Dreams-ish, right? If you build it, they will come. Those are the kinds of plays that I want to see, things that I wouldn't be able to see at any regional theater across the country,
Do you think there's any risk in being too risk-averse? I mean, I don't know because I'm not in the decision-maker's position, but just as a viewer, as an audience member, I can't help but feel like I'm less likely to go to the theater and invest my time and energy and money in that if the performance is not interesting and it's not pushing some boundaries. And I don't know how many of me there are out there who are making decisions that way. But intuitively to me, it seems like the theater is actually taking a risk by not taking risks.
That's what my argument is. You're on my train. Yeah, absolutely. I think in the long run, that's true. And I think we're not going to be able to say the American theater at some point, right? Like Hollywood, everything's going to be marbleized, whatever the theater's version of that is. I do think we run that risk. But I qualified that to say like it's the mid-sized and up companies that are really swimming in these difficult, treacherous waters. I do think the small companies, the vagabond companies, the ones that are just fly by night by design are not doing that kind of work. They're still doing the quote experimental fringe kind of stuff, which I don't really know what that means exactly. It's just that it's not, in the mainstream that I find interesting. That it would be great to be able to put support behind that. That's the American theater. I mean, I just did a show in the Edinburgh Fringe last summer, and it was like Disneyland in the best sense of that, right? For theater, where the one of a kind, undeniably unique thing was happening on the street corner. It was just all around. And that felt like, and truly it was a different world.
We went the other day to theater and it was so confusing. I mean, I understood what the play is about, the topic, but it was nothing that made me think. I mean, why was the play written in the first place? What was the message? What is the writer trying to convey? And I thought, wow, it would have been better if I stayed home. And I think this applies to, I don't know about other arts, but plays and books are the things that I've consumed throughout my life. I was introduced to plays as books at first. I wasn't introduced to theater until very, very late. I mean, I was introduced to everything late. And I think that social media has made us so confused to the point where we don't know what we believe anymore. And the directors and the decision makers, publishers and whatnot, are just trying to please everyone, which I don't think will work. Right now, maybe it's working, but I personally don't think it will work because we have to have an audience, whether we like it or not. Not everyone can be our audience.
Right. If you look at even just the musicals, right, that have succeeded financially in the past couple of years, there's only been one. What was it called? The Queen of Versailles, that just went up starring Kristen Chenoweth, had Stephen Schwartz and Winnie Holtzman, the team who did Wicked. Sorry, it wasn't Winnie Holtzman, it was Lindsay Ferrantino, but Stephen Schwartz did Wicked, right? Like the best of all possible talent out there, and it closed within a month. And was good from all accounts. So I don't know. And I do think to some degree we see that with particularly the things that are being adapted. We don't necessarily have a robust original theater anymore. That's true in Hollywood as well. Everything is about intellectual property. Everything is in relation to something else which has this amount of followers behind it, right? It's driven by that. It feels like a good short-term decision, but I don't think in the long term that's going to serve the audiences or the artists very well.
I have a question that kind of dovetails with that and also returns to what you said early on about musical theater, about that bug biting the hardest. I'm not a theater kid, so again, maybe I'm not representative, but musical theater is the hardest sell for me. I really like plays, but I don't think I've ever seen a musical in theater and been like, oh yeah, I really enjoyed that. And I want to say it's because they feel to me more artificial, but I don't know if that's really the right word, because like I wasn't repulsed by Angels in America because it was artificial. I wasn't repulsed by Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead because it was artificial, and it's all artifice. But it's just something about musical theater, at least what I've seen, has felt rather tinny to me. So I don't know, is there a way to square that circle? Why do you think musical theater is what gets people hooked? And do you think it's a symptom of there being something off in the musical theater world right now that's not necessarily intrinsic to the genre?
There are not a ton of musicals that I love, to be honest, in terms of like as an audience sitting through it. And there is something inherently much more presentational to a musical. For God's sakes, they stop and burst into song, right? Unless you're one of my 3 children, you don't do that on a daily basis. So there's something about that. I mean, I do love there's a notion, Oscar Hammerstein had is like that when a song bursts forth, it's because the text can no longer handle it, right? Like that it's so big that it has to be expressed in music. I do like that notion. But yeah, I think in terms of why it's so popular, it just has to do with the musical theater industrial complex being very successful in marketing amateur rights to high schools, community theaters. They do those because they can cast a lot of people in them. And at that time in life, I'm just speaking from my own experience here, I could sing. I had, the ability to do that. I had a voice, and I was given a platform to be seen and to be held in a way. I wasn't an athlete, right? I wasn't getting that kind of attention. I think for the most part, that is the kind of kid you're encountering in high school or community theaters who maybe they're not being seen any other way. And musical theater gives a big pronounced spotlight to that. And that is addictive. Regardless of what you feel about the art form itself or the artificiality of it, if somebody had roped you in at some point, you might have felt that bug. It's palpable and real. I've been involved in 2 musicals. And one of them has been much more of a like sort of the commercial form of musical that you expect with a big opening number, an I Want song, and an 11 o'clock number, that kind of thing. That was called Moria and the Comet. That's a play for young audiences. And the other is called Our New Town. And it's I don't even know if it's fair to call it a musical. It is definitely a play with a lot of songs in it. But the concept of it is that the college kids who are in this moment with us have crafted these songs. So it's not supposed to be really good or big. It's supposed to have this sort of intimate and kind of rough feel to it. The premise of it is that the students were in a production of Our Town, and there was a shooting that happened during that production. And the theater is about to be torn down. And so this is the last time they've created this unauthorized use of the space. They're coming together to sort of hold a vigil, a memorial, let's work through this together kind of thing. And you're the audience who's come to that. And it's a powerful, powerful piece, but it's not functioning in the same way that musicals are, right?
When you're writing plays, do you worry about being accused of misrepresenting some groups of people because of the characters that you write? And if so, do you think that's healthy for us as creatives?
I mean, we talk about in theater a lot authenticity in representation, and at least for playwrights, there is so much more trepidation and hesitancy than there was when I first started teaching undergrads in 2014 around this idea of writing anything, and I mean anything, that's outside of my lived experience. And I say to them, like, well, how many plays about 19-year-old white kids are we going to have? So am I thinking about all of that as I'm writing? So I live in the world, right? I can't not be aware of those things, but I do try to stay away from it. I try to stay true to what is it that this play wants to be? What is it that these characters need to say? What is it that I, am feeling really drawn to? And to me, so much of that is not the writing itself. It's actually listening after it's written, right? Like I just try to get in the zone and let it come out. And then I look back and I say, okay, now let me see if I can hear what this play is. And not thinking about, is XYZ going to produce this, or is this the thing that's going to get me to Broadway? I mean, the thing that seemingly today is going to get me to Broadway is the absolute last thing that I would have thought is going to do that. My play Riff, the one that I took to Edinburgh, is about my relationship, or inspired by my relationship with my brother, who is an incarcerated person. And while he's been incarcerated, he's become a member of a white supremacist gang in prison. And for a long time, I took the sort of cancel culture route and was like, I can't be part of your life. And then, like, back in 2016, I started having lots of feelings. And honestly, I just missed my brother. I mean, there's all kinds of feelings of guilt and other things swirling around, but I missed him. And I reached back out and we've reconnected. His life has been changed and my life has been changed. And then suddenly I had no intention ever of writing a play about this, because I thought, well, this is my life. I don't want that, like on stage. But I shared that story with an artistic director and she was like, you have to write this, or you at least have to write a play that's about this, in a moment where we can't seem to, for the most petty grievances, sit in a room together and exist and try to find coexistence. Just the two of you being able to sit in a room together and work these things out. And that's the play. It looks at the 26-year evolution of that, from the time he gets incarcerated to what would essentially be the future of my own life, and their relationship and the ins and outs of that.
Do you want to read a section from that play? Or
don't think I can read a section from that play, because I would really have to be beeping a lot. And so, but I have a section picked out from, this is an early play of mine called Qualities of Starlight. It is about a young couple. He is an astronomer, and they have been trying to have children, and finally they get approved for adoption, but she's a teen mother, and I'm giving you a backstory. She was raised by her grandmother and wants to meet the potential grandparents before she says yes. So it's more than just the parents. And so he's fairly estranged from his family, who are his mom and dad, who are back in the Appalachian South in a small town. And he hasn't seen them in a long time. And he goes back and he finds out that they've become addicts, right, as he's about to introduce them to the person who's going to give them a child. And I say all that, which is very heavy, and this is a comedy. So I've tried to find the humor in this, and I'm going to read to you the beginning of the second act. The final act we see before the curtain goes down in Act 1 is Theo, who's the protagonist of the play, the son who's come back, has taken a bunch of the meth into his hands and he swallowed it to prove a point. And the last thing he says is boom, boom, bang. And so we come back and it's just he and his parents, and he's tripping. So here we go. Hold on tight. All right, Pops, it's like this. Imagine a balloon. Well, what color is it? Who cares? It's clear, transparent, and it's painted with dots, billions of dots. What color are the dots? It doesn't matter. All colors. And each one of us, me, you, Mama Bear, each one of us is a dot on the balloon. Look out. You see the other dots. You see each other, but only from a distance, right? Never too close. Too close, not good. And the little clear balloon painted with multicolored dots, it's just getting bigger, real big, explosively big. And you, me, and Mama Bear there, each of us is being a dot on the balloon. And when it expands to us, each a dot, it looks like all the other dots are moving away from us, right? Because they are moving away, going. Everything's expanding. We're all moving away from each other. Now, what if we let a little air out of the balloon? What happens then? We all seem closer, because we are closer. But then something puts air back in the balloon. Something puts it back. God, gravity, dark matter. It doesn't matter what it is or who it is. It's blowing the air into the balloon. That's not the point. No matter what we call that force, the fundamental truth is, the truth about all of it is that the nature of all things is to push and pull till it breaks apart. You see? More distance, the dots. We get further away, and when it breaks, when it touches another balloon, a balloon so unfamiliar we can't process it, like a balloon of endlessness, of poetry. It's like that kind of balloon. When our balloon, our universe, you see, rubs up against another, then there's contraction, whip-like, reset, tabula rasa, and nothing's ever the same. Empty is different than full. It's back to square one, but a different square one, more like a condensed square 10. And then there are layers and layers of these balloons on planes. You following me? Yeah, balloon. I heard you. We'll stop there.
I love it.
That's great. Agreed.
This is like something that actually makes you think, feel, laugh. Great job.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.